Dajjal in the Quran. You would seldom find someone lecturing on this topic. And it is very likely that you are probably listening to this for the first time in your life. So let me prepare you by sharing with you my view that this is the mother of all difficult subjects. And perhaps that's why you don't find scholars lecturing on this subject. Our Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam said about Al-Masih al-Dajjal, or Dajjal, the false Messiah, the Antichrist, the one who would claim to be the Messiah. He would say, Ana al-Masih, but it would be a lie, because he is not Isa alayhi salam, the son of the Virgin Mary. He's someone else. Our Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi salam warned us about him and said that he would constitute the greatest test and trial that mankind would experience. From the time of Adam alayhi salam to the last day, there will never be a greater test and trial than that of Dajjal. And yet, the name Dajjal does not appear in the Quran. No. The two most important cities of Akhirul Zaman are Jerusalem and Constantinople. And Jerusalem does not appear in the Quran by name. And Constantinople does not appear in the Quran by name. No. The Ummah of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam is going to be led in Akhirul Zaman by someone who will be descended from his seed. And he is known as the Imam al-Mahdi. But he is not mentioned in the Quran by name. And as a consequence, the message is conveyed plain and clear that you cannot study this subject without thinking. You have to devote an immense amount of time to thinking to understand the subject. We will not be able to complete Dajjal in the Quran in 1 hour. So there will be parts of the subject that will be left out. But I want to begin not with the Quran, but with Hadith. The Hadith is located in Sahih Bukhari, also in Sahih Muslim. And our Prophet said about him, every prophet has warned his people about Dajjal. And the Prophet Nuh alayhi salam warned his people about Dajjal. But I am going to tell you something no one has said before me. DAJJAL sees with the left eye. He is blind in the right eye. It looks like a bulging grape, but your Lord is not one-eyed. Between his eyes, on his forehead, is written the word kafir. And every mu'min, the mu'min is the one who has Islam in his heart. So he is not afraid to proclaim the truth. He doesn't say, I can't do that. My business will collapse. I can't do that. They put my name on a no-fly list. I can't do that. They'll say I'm a terrorist. I can't do that. I won't get a promotion in my job. I can't do that. People will shun me. They will say that I am an extremist. The mu'min is not like that. The mu'min has something called sincerity in his heart. It's not sold in KLCC. No. The mu'min worships Allah with sincerity. And when it is right, he stands up for it, regardless of the price he has to pay. He doesn't sit on the fence. Shall I repeat that? And then will you send that message to your politicians? He does not sit on the fence. When it is right, he stands up for it, regardless of the price he has to pay. And when it is wrong, when it is evil, when it is unjust, like Saudi Arabia's nasty, wicked, bogus war on the innocent people of Yemen with this lie that is a Sunni-Shia conflict. When it is a nasty lie, when it is a wicked lie, when it is unjust, he doesn't sit on the fence. No, he stands up against it. That is a mu'min. And you can't find him today. Difficult to find him today. So the Prophet said, when the mu'min looks at DAJJAL, at the forehead, he will be able to read kafir written on the forehead of DAJJAL between his eyes. Regardless of whether he is katib or ghayru katib, whether he is literate or he is illiterate, he can still read. The implication is that the kafir, the one sitting on the fence and the rest, they see with only the left eye. They are also blind in the right eye, meaning they have only external sight. They have knowledge which comes to them externally, the stuff that you get at the universities. And they are internally blind, like DAJJAL. And so they can't see, they can't read. But the mu'min can read kafir because he has nur in his heart. And as I told you, they don't sell nur in the supermarket. Only Allah can give you nur. Not even the politicians can give you nur. Not even the government can give you nur. Only Allah can give you nur. And so this introduction to Dajjal makes it plain and clear that you cannot penetrate this subject unless you can interpret religious symbolism. Like he saw the sun and the moon and 11 stars making sijda before him. And then 40 years later, he saw his father and his mother and 11 brothers bowing down before him. And then Yusuf alayhi salam said to his father, "This is the dream come true, that the sun was a symbol of his father, and the moon was a symbol of his mother, and 11 stars symbolized his 11 brothers." And so if you cannot interpret religious symbolism, you cannot explain and understand the subject of Dajjal. And while I have students of mine who are Salafi, yes, the Salafi methodology is defective. So they have to abandon that methodology when they become my students. The Salafi methodology is that whatever is in the Quran and in the Hadith and has not been interpreted by Allah and His Messenger and by the Aslaf can no longer be interpreted by anyone. And that has left the Salafi world blind, unable to understand and recognize the reality of the world today, in which Dajjal is now the mastermind. So those of you who are, come Kevin, come front, come here. This is a distinguished scholar of Islam, Dr. Kevin Barrett from the United States of America, mashallah. Yeah. Alaikum salam. If you follow that methodology, you will not be able to penetrate the subject of Dajjal. I want to begin with Surah Al-Kahf of the Quran. And why do I do so? Because it is the only surah of the Quran about which Nabi Muhammad ﷺ has established a link with Dajjal. He said, recite the first 10 ayat of Surah Al-Kahf. And then there are other versions of this hadith. And you will be protected from the fitna of Dajjal. So there is a link between Surah Al-Kahf and Dajjal, as with no other surah of the Quran. And the background of Surah Al-Kahf of the Quran, you will find it in my book entitled Surah Al-Kahf in the Modern Age. I don't know where the books are, somewhere around. Yeah, Surah Al-Kahf in the Modern Age. That is the book. And in that book you will find the background of this. That the pagan, the Quraysh, did not know how to deal with a man amongst them who said, he is a Nabi. And they sent a delegation to the Jews, the rabbis in the north, in Yathrib. And the rabbis said, ask him these 3 questions, which only a prophet can answer. And you have to do some homework. You have to spend a little time with those 3 questions, which I cannot do tonight, if you want to study the subject. The rabbis had knowledge, yes, and they did not disclose that knowledge. Up to this day, they don't disclose it. But on the basis of the knowledge which they had, they said, ask him these three questions which only a prophet can answer. Not even the Prime Minister can answer it. Ask him about the ruh, the spirit. Ask him about the great traveler who traveled to the two ends of the land. And ask him about the young men and the cave. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down the answers in the Quran. That is how important the subject is. But two of the answers are located in Surah Al-Kahf. And the third answer is located in Surah Al-Isra, indicating Allah is saying to you that these two surahs are linked with each other. They explain each other. When he answered the first question, he first repeated the question and then answered it. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ, and they questioned thee about the ruh. And then he answered. And we don't have the time to spend 15 minutes on that answer now. But which book of mine? Yes, DAJJAL, the Quran, and Awwalul Zaman. That book has a chapter on this, the ruh. Then when he answered the second question, he did the same thing. He first repeated the question and then he answered it. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنْ ذِي الْقَرْنَيْنِ, and they question thee, O Muhammad ﷺ, about this great traveler. And the great traveler is known as Zulqarnain. Zulqarnain meaning not one with two horns, no. One who has two people, two generations, two epochs. One in the past and one to come in the future. And we will touch on that, inshallah, on Saturday in KLCC, Surah, at 2 o'clock, Constantinople in the Quran. And I wrote a book on that, an Islamic view of Gog and Magog in the modern world. In answering the second question, the Quran took us to Gog and Magog, Ya'juj and Ma'juj. And Ya'juj and Ma'juj are a major sign of the last day. So the rabbis knew about Gog and Magog. And they were testing him to see whether he knew about Gog and Magog. And Allah stunned them by not only answering their questions about the two journeys, but went on to answer them and tell them about the third journey that they didn't ask about. But they wanted to know whether he knew about the third journey. Remember the question? The great traveler who traveled to the two ends of the land. But Allah went on. Oh, okay. Allah knew that they wanted to know about the third journey. That is why He answered, and He provided the knowledge that they wanted, the answer on the third journey. And the third journey led to Gog and Magog, which is a major sign of the last day. Now then, the third question. In answering the third question, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not repeat the question. No. This is not by accident. there is something that he is concealing. He wants to leave the rabbis guessing, so he does not repeat the question. The target of the second question was a major sign of the last day. The target of the third question has to be a major sign of the last day. And the most important one of all is DAJJAL. And so it should not be difficult for us to conclude that when the rabbis ask about the young man in the cave, the target of the question was DAJJAL. And so when we go to look at the answer and study the answer, that answer delivers to us information that is critically important about DAJJAL. It is in that answer that the young men fled from the city because of oppression. And that's how it is today as well. The minute you stand up for the truth, they target you. But they did not sit on the fence. They did not waver. They stood up firmly for the truth, like my brother Kevin Barrett here. They stood up firmly for the truth. And as a consequence, they had to leave, like he would probably have to leave the United States now. And they fled into a cave. And they slept for 300 years. And after 300 years, Allah woke them up. And they started to question each other. How long have we been here? And they said, maybe a day or a part of a day. And I say to myself, wait a minute, let me scratch my head. Something wrong here. If you have slept for 300 years, when you wake up, you have to be blind not to see that you've been there for a long time. Why? Because your beard will be as long as from Tawfiq to KLCC. Yes. So you'll be able to see. It's a long time. But they said a day or a part of a day, indicating that even though they had spent 300 years, when they woke up, they were still the same age. So the 300 years had not been spent in biological time. Okay? The 300 years had not been spent in our world of space and time. Is that clear? Do you all agree with me? Wrong. Wrong. Because the Quran says that the sunlight would enter in the morning and the evening. And the bodies will roll, attracted to the sunlight, every morning and every evening. So every single day of those 300 years, the young men were in this world of space and time. So now we have what is known as a paradox. We have the evidence that they were in this world throughout the 300 years. And we also have the evidence that they were in another world for those 300 years where you do not grow old and women don't need cosmetics. No. So how do we solve this problem? This paradox is meant to open the door to understanding of DAJJAL. that although he is released into the world, and he is here amongst us in the world, he is not in our world of space and time. No. The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wassalam, when Dajjal is released, he will live on earth for 40 days. One day like a year. One day like a month. One day like a week. وَسَائِرُ أَيَّامِهِ كَأَيَّامِكُمْ, and all this day, all the rest of his days, like your days. The Salafi methodology reaches here roadblock. They cannot proceed. The Salafi methodology cannot deal with this. Now, a day like a year, a day like a month, a day like a week, and all his days like your days. Our methodology is one in which we interpret it. And we recognize that Dajjal is going to be, he's here on earth, he's living amongst us, yeah. And even though he's here amongst us, he's not in our world of space and time. So you can't see him as yet. Can you see the angels? But they are here. Can you see the jinn? But they are here. Therefore, Dajjal is also here, but you cannot see him. He passes through three stages. Three stages. And the Quran uses the beautiful metaphor of a shadow. A shadow. And Allah says in Surah Al-Mursalat, and here is the first verse of the Quran that we quote. بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم انطلقوا. Let the world now proceed. Let the historical process now proceed. انطلقوا إلى ظل, to a shadow. انطلقوا إلى ظل ذي ثلاث شعب, a shadow which will emerge in three parts. They don't teach this in the school of diplomacy. They don't teach this in the Department of Political Science, the universities. That there is going to be a shadow falling upon the world. And that shadow has to pass through three stages before the shadow will be moved away and Dajjal will appear in person. Salafi methodology doesn't know how to handle this. No? The three stages of that shadow I have explained in my first book entitled Jerusalem in the Quran, which many of you have read already. It is in English, it is also in BAHASA. And in those three stages we said, now listen carefully, within those three stages, he gave to the world Pax Britannica and then Pax Americana, where we are now. And finally there will be a third stage of the shadow. And that we say would be Pax Judaica. But the word Pax is a lie. Pax means peace. But he is a liar and he oppresses and it's a river of blood. When the third stage of the shadow has been completed, then the shadow will be lifted and Dajjal will appear in person. This is Suratul Mursalat. And then last night and the night on Sunday, we took you to the hadith, the prophecy of the Prophet ﷺ, in which he was speaking to Mu'az ibn Jabal radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and he gave a timeline of events, which you probably already know now. 5 events. The Jerusalem center stage, which symbolizes Pax Judaica. Medina in ruins, which indicates that this ummah has no role to play on the stage of the world. No. And then comes the Great War, Khuruj al-Malhama. And then after that comes the conquest of Constantinople, which is our lecture on Saturday. And after that comes the Khuruj of Dajjal. The shadow is now lifted, and Dajjal will now appear in person. And I took 25 minutes with just this. How will I ever finish this topic? When the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam went on to say that Dajjal will come with 2 things, a river and a fire. But his river will be a fire, and his fire would be the cool waters of a river, indicating that in those long years when the shadow is on the world, things will not be what they appear to be. No. Appearance and reality will be completely opposite to each other. They will tell you, with their faces straight, yeah, it was Osama bin Laden and his men hiding in a cave in Afghanistan. They are the ones who bombed the World Trade Center and brought it down. And we know it's a lie. Yeah. And yet there are so many who were fooled. They have eyes and yet they cannot see. And so in Surah Al-Kahf of the Quran, Allah has given the most important passage of all in the whole Quran to warn you about Dajjal. And the warning is delivered most of all to the Jews. The warning is conveyed through Musa alayhi salam. But the warning is actually meant for his followers, the Jews. That he declared that I am indeed the most learned of all men. That's what they say, that they are the elite of mankind. And Allah responded and said, no, you are not. There's one more learned than you are. They don't like to hear that. No? They believe they're the elite of mankind. They believe that they are the chosen people of the Lord God, and heaven is reserved for them. So to be told that there's one more learned than you, it is shocking to them. So Musa alayhi salam says, I want to meet him, the one who is more learned than Musa alayhi salam. And it is Khidr alayhi salam. And the Quran is telling us that the scholar, the guide, the one who can penetrate the reality of the world in Akhir Zaman, the one you should follow is Khidr. You have to look for a Khidr. How do you find him? Look for the footprints. Yes, look for the footprints. That's how you'll find him. So Musa says, I want to meet him. And Allah says, if you want to meet him, you'll have to travel to the place where the 2 oceans meet. Majma'ul Bahrain. The Salafi methodology would now search to see whether it is Atlantic and Pacific or Indian Ocean and Pacific. But our methodology says no. The two oceans are two oceans of knowledge. And Imam al-Baydawi, he agrees in his tafsir. It is the ocean of knowledge externally acquired and the ocean of knowledge internally received. These two oceans of knowledge have to be harmoniously integrated. And it cannot be integrated without Noor. Without Noor, you remain Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You'll have one foot in that camp and one foot in this camp. You'll have your PhD from some university and you'll have your degree from some Darul Uloom. And when you are here, you have this knowledge. When you're there, you have that knowledge. In two different worlds. But when you have Noor, you can integrate the two worlds of knowledge harmoniously. And then you have a Khidr. That's why the world of Islamic scholarship today, and it is something painful for me to have to say it, but I have to make my back strong and say it, despite the pain, that the world of Islamic scholarship have failed, yes, and failed miserably, yes, because they have not gone to this methodology of Khidr alayhi salam. He is the one who can understand the world. He's the most learned of all. And Allah spoke two things about him. Number one, he is the embodiment of kindness. Kindness. You can do what you want. He still remains kind. Yes. And secondly, that knowledge comes to him like a river flowing from above. وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ مِن لَدُنَّا عِلْمًا. So his knowledge is not mechanical, like knowledge from a factory. But his knowledge is like the rain, that when it comes and falls, it brings the brown, the dead earth back to life and everything becomes green. That's why he's known as Mr. Green. Khidr alayhi salam. And then Surah Al-Kahf gives us the amazing encounter between Musa and Khidr, and I don't have the time to keep you. That takes another 15 minutes. And every time there's a test, Musa fails. And Khidr alayhi salam has to explain. And at the end of it, he says, this is the ta'weel. This is the word he used. This is the ta'weel of that which you did not understand, Musa. And so Musa was judging on the basis of external appearance. And all of us today are doing that. The world of women mostly are doing that today. Blessed is that woman who has eyes and who can see. Blessed is that woman who has eyes and who can see. Because most women today are like that. And this thing called the smartphone is contributing towards the destruction of the thinking capacity. So blessed is that woman who has eyes and who can see. Every time he was tested, Musa failed. And the message is being sent to Banu Israel, to the Jews. Be careful. Be warned. You're going to fail as well. And every time he failed, Khidr alayhi salam had to explain to him the um, inner reality, not the external appearance, the inner reality of the event. And so this passage of the Quran, which unfortunately we don't have the time to analyze with you, is the mother of all passages of the Quran, in warning us about Dajjal and that the need to study Dajjal by going beyond external, I didn't bring any with me. Can someone give me a 1 ringgit, please? Satu ringgit. Yes, sir. That you have to go beyond the external appearance of what Dajjal has given to you in order to recognize the internal reality that he's going to use money to enslave you. When Allah went on beyond Surah Al-Kahf in the Quran to teach the subject of Dajjal, I was amazed. I was stunned while writing my book on Dajjal. I wrote the first book, Dajjal, the Quran and Awwalul Zaman. And it was while writing the book that new knowledge was coming to me. And I found something strange. That the Quran said, Sulaiman alayhi salam, he died. And when I read the tafsir, all of them told me, he died while sitting on his throne. And the jinn who had to work for him, they didn't know he was dead. And some termites had to come. You have termites in Malaysia? Yeah? Okay. The termites had to come and nibble and bite at the bottom of his staff. Hand me the staff, please. Yeah? Yeah. The bottom of the staff. They had to bite and bite and bite. I don't know how many years it took to bite enough. And then the staff lost its balance. And then the staff collapsed. And then his body collapsed. And only when the body collapsed, then the jinn realized he was dead. So I said, did this come from Hollywood or from Disneyland? Eh? Did this nonsense come from Hollywood or from Disneyland? It's difficult for me to digest this. Oh, I could eat Musam King. Very nice, but I can't digest this nonsense. Yeah. So then I was asking myself, I say, if this actually happened, that the ruling king in the world, he died, and his body remained on his throne for so many years or months, surely it will be recorded in history. Yes. But when we go to the historical record, there is no mention of this at all. How come? This was during the time when I'm still searching how to deal with this nonsense. Allah had not yet given me the knowledge. But I was not prepared to accept nonsense. But my teacher had taught me, never study any verse of the Quran in isolation. I have a book entitled Methodology for Study of the Quran. You must go and take all the verses of the Quran on the subject and try to bring them all together in a harmonious whole. And that's not a job for a schoolboy. So then I said, okay, let me do what my teacher asked me to do. And when I did that, then I discovered that no, this is wrong. That in Surah Surah Sad of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent a test, a trial to Sulaiman alayhi salam. And he is the wisest of all men. Will he understand? Will he understand? Like yesterday, I had to go out, and I was very tired when I came home to the hotel. 2:30, I had not performed my salat, Zuhr, and I went to sleep without performing salat. When I was sound asleep, somebody came and held on to my foot, and I woke up, nobody. Then I realized, Imran, wake up, go perform your salat. Then I realized, get up, go perform your salat, you see. So you have to be able to read and understand when these events occur. So Allah now sends a vision to Sulaiman alayhi salam. And he sees someone sitting on his throne. This is the man who is ruling the world, eh? And someone is sitting on his throne. Allah put him on the throne. And he is a Jasad. The word Jasad had been used earlier when the Samiri took the gold and made it into a golden calf. So this is your Lord, worship. And that golden calf was described as Jasad, a body without a soul. So this Jasad is sitting on the throne, but this cannot be a calf, this has to be a human being. From the time he saw that vision, he immediately understood. Immediately understood. This is the wisdom of Sulaiman alayhi salam. Very scarce today, that kind of wisdom. Immediate understanding. He understood that this was an evil being. And he also understood that Allah had sent this vision because this fella, this evil being, he wants to inherit my kingdom. He wants to rule over holy Israel. So what did he do? ثُمَّ أَنَابَ. He turned towards Allah penitently. قَالَ رَبِّ اغْفِرْ لِي. He said, "Oh Allah, kindly forgive me." Naturally, don't make the mistake, go searching. What sin did he commit? Not that nonsense, no. He's asking for forgiveness before he asks for something, that's all. Not any sin, particular sin he had committed. Don't forget that. If you want to ask for something, first ask for forgiveness and then ask. وَهَبْ لِي مُلْكًا لَا يَنْبَغِي لِأَحَدٍ مِّن بَعْدِي. And grant that none can inherit my kingdom. No one can inherit my kingdom. And also grant that there can never be a kingdom like mine again in history. Innaka antal wahhab. You are the one who grants dua. So said, so done. Allah accepted his dua. And as soon as Sulaiman alayhi salam died, the kingdom collapsed and has never been restored up to this day. Then I went to the other passage now, which is in Surah Namal, that when Sulaiman died, وَلَمَّا قَضَى سُلَيْمَانَ الْمَوْتِ, the jinn who were ordered to work for him by Allah, and if they disobeyed his orders, Allah would punish them with terrible punishment. Among those jinn were those who were in chains, in shackles. وَآخَرِينَ مُقَرَّنِينَ فِي الْأَصْفَادِ, they were in chains. So when he died, the jinn were not aware that he was dead. Everybody else knew he was dead and he was buried. But the jinn did not know because they're in chains. And they kept on seeing someone sitting on his throne. Who was that? Right? Obviously, it's the Jasad. And the Jasad is holding on to the staff. But when Dabbatul Ard was released by Allah, this is one of the major signs of the last day. The beast or the creature of the earth, Dabbatul Ard, is there in Christian and Jewish eschatology. It's also there in the Quran. When they are released, the Quran says, taklimuhum, that Gog and Magog are going to harm them, cause injury to them, harm them. But the punctuation didn't come with Jibreel alayhi salam. So you can have mischief in the punctuation. And that's what happened here. Instead of taklimuhum, every copy of the Quran today says to kallimuhum. The spelling is the same, it's just the punctuation, which means speak to them. The Dabbatul Ard will speak, when it should rather be Dabbatul Ard will harm you, cause damage to you, okay? So then the Quran says Dabbatul Ard came and consumed his minsa'a. And when we went to the tafsir, every single tafsir said, this is the minsa'a, the stuff. So then I went to the experts of the Arabic language, different parts of the world. And they all came back with the same answer. Minsa'a is the stuff. So Dabbatul Ard will consume the stuff. When they consume the stuff, then the body will collapse. You know the stuff from Hollywood. The body will collapse. But I was not satisfied with that, because my teacher had given me proper methodology. I said, no. Even if every single tafsir had said so, and every expert has said so, I said no. If Allah in the Quran has always used the word asa with sword for stuff, every single instance, idrib bi asaka al-hajar, take your staff and strike the rock, take your staff and strike the sea, throw your staff on the ground, it becomes a snake. Every time the word used in the Quran is asa, with sword. Why would Allah now use another word? Minsa, with a sin. for the same stuff. No, I refuse to accept that. Imran, every single tafsir says it's stuff. All the scholars of the Arabic language say it's stuff. What are you doing, Imran? I said, no, I refuse to accept that. Because the methodology for the study of the Quran is check to see all the verses. And since Allah has always used the word asa for stuff, min sa'a has to be something more than stuff. Then I understood that min sa'a is not stuff. That when Dabbatul Ard come and they consume the min sa'a, they're not nibbling at the stuff like termites. They're not consuming the stuff. They're consuming something which is connected with the stuff. It is the miraculous internal spirit of the stuff. The spirit or the miraculous qualities of the stuff, that when you throw it on the ground, it becomes a serpent. That when you strike the rock, the water comes out. When you strike the sea parts. So while the jasad is holding on to that stuff, the min sa'a of the stuff can be used to deceive the jinn. And they are seeing Sulaiman alayhi salam standing up and walking and talking. Like even today, you turn on the television, you could see Tunku Abdul Rahman. Yeah, look, he is on television. And he's talking and he's lecturing. It's a video. So the min sa'a of the stuff has this capacity to be used to show images of Sulaiman alayhi salam, which fool the jinn. And that is what is going to be destroyed by Dabbatul Ard. So what is Dabbatul Ard? It is something which has the capacity to destroy the spiritual heart of things. And my understanding was immediate, that we are now being inundated with the electromagnetic waves of cell phones and wireless internet and your smartphones and the cell phone towers. And this electromagnetic waves, it has a damaging effect upon you, but most of all on your children. That it will damage the child's memory. So I tested it and I found the evidence that the children who were being exposed to the electromagnetic waves were already being damaged, their memory was being damaged. So if I am correct, you're not going to get any hafiz of the Quran from the city in the future. Never. The only hafiz of the Quran will be a child who grows up outside of the damaging effects of Dabbatul Ard. So now, who is the Jasad? Obviously, the Jasad sitting on the throne is Dajjal. This is the most direct reference in the whole Quran to Dajjal. And what is the implication of Allah showing Sulaiman alayhi salam, showing him Dajjal sitting on his throne? Number one, that we should get confirmation that what our Prophet said was correct, that he is known as Al-Masih al-Dajjal because he wants to impersonate the Messiah. And the Messiah is going to return to the world to rule the world. But he will rule the world from a Khilafah state, from a holy state of Israel. Of course, it will not be the one of Sulaiman alayhi salam, nor would it compare with that. It will just be another holy state. And so Dajjal is shown sitting on the throne to tell Sulaiman alayhi salam that Dajjal wants to rule the world from your holy state in Jerusalem in order to declare that he is the Messiah. This is the first and the most important of all implications to emerge from that vision. Number two, the Dajjal is a Jasad. But when you see him, you see a human being. You cannot see anything external other than a human being. Well, then what is it that makes him a Jasad? What does he lack that the rest of us have as human beings? The answer is, we have the ruh that Allah gives to the human being. But he does not have that ruh. So ask him about the ruh. Remember the question? Ask him about the ruh. Because here is a defining moment. We have a ruh, but he does not have that ruh. In what way is his ruh different from ours? The Quran tells us, and I have 1 more minute left, the Quran tells us that Allah offered to human beings an amana. He offered the amana to the samawat, and they said no. He offered the amana to the ard, and they said no. He offered the amana to the mountains, they said no. And then mankind accepted the amana. The amana is the ruh that Allah breathes into you, that gives you something called freedom. Freedom to think. Freedom to think independently. Freedom to pursue knowledge and to acquire knowledge independently. Freedom to extend the frontiers of knowledge. That is what Allah gave to us. Do we use it? Huh? No. Muhammad Iqbal said, this ummah stopped thinking 500 years ago. Yes. This is the tragedy with which we live today. He cannot think like that, Dajjal. He does not have the freedom. He is externally programmed. And the freedom that we have also gives us the freedom to choose. Allah says, Al-haqqu min rabbikum faman sha'a falyu'min wa man sha'a falyakfur. The truth is from your Lord. Whosoever wishes has the freedom to accept, and whosoever wishes has the freedom to reject. But he does not have that freedom, Dajjal. He is externally programmed. And so what Dajjal wants to do with us is to transform all of mankind into Jasads like himself. When we stop thinking, then others will think for us. This has already happened in the United States. Ask Dr. Kevin Barrett, he'll tell you. This has already happened in the United States. The American people have stopped thinking. And others think for them. And when you stop thinking, you'll also stop choosing. And others will choose for you. And you'll become like sheep. And any tune that the Dajjal plays, you will dance to that tune. My time is up, and I have left out important parts of the subject. But you can find that which I have left out in my books. The last book I have just written is the Quran, Dajjal, and the Jasad. And I wrote this to present a challenge to the scholars of Islam. You have to answer me now. Before this, there is a book entitled Dajjal, the Quran, and Awwalul Zaman. And there are other books to come on Dajjal and money, Dajjal and the feminist revolution. Okay? Several books have to be written, and we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might give me life long enough. This is Dajjal and money here. I want to end by advising that the best defense that you have, the best defense that you have to protect yourself and protect your wives and protect your children from Dajjal is the Book of Allah. And your first step towards the Book of Allah is to learn to recite it in Arabic. And when you learn to recite it in Arabic, you have to learn to recite it from cover to cover. That's the first step. By the age of 7, your child should already be reciting the Quran fluently. By the age of 7. And by the age of 10, your child should be reciting the Quran cover to cover once a month. If you wait until your child is a teenager, remember, the sea is going to be rough in the teenage years. The sea will be rough in the teenage years. These are tumultuous years for the teenager, boy as well as girl. So do it before they reach 13. Make sure that you recite the Quran from cover to cover in Arabic once a month. This is the beginning of the defense against the Dajjal. After this comes the next step to understand what you're reciting. And then after that comes the next step to study the Quran, and my book, Methodology for Study of the Quran, will help you with that. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين آمين. Certainly.
We still got time. We come to the session of Q&A. For brothers who like to ask questions or need some clarifications, you can come forward and use this mic. And then for ladies, maybe you can write on the piece of paper and pass forward. Inshallah, we will read what the questions.
Okay. Okay. Any questions? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, Assalamualaikum, Sheikh. I've got two questions regarding tonight's lecture. The first one is regarding the 3 stages of shadow you said. You said that the Pax Judaica has not come yet. But my understanding is if you look at the influence of Israel, they are a state that no other state can now criticize. This is saying that to know who you're being ruled, you just have to ask who you cannot criticize. And also, if you look at all the major companies, all the major top 500 companies, they are now headquartered in Israel. So does that represent that Israel already has that power, already at the center of the stage?
The question is important. Behind the scenes, of course, Israel is already ruling the world. But Israel is not ruling the world from in front of the curtain. Everybody knows the most powerful state in the world today is the United States and Russia, not Israel. But the curtain will have to be removed. And only when the curtain is removed and it can plain and clear, you can see this is the ruling state in the world. Only then would we be able to say that the third stage of the shadow has now come. In order for the first stage of the shadow to give way to the second stage, 2 great wars had to be waged. 50, 60 million people had to be killed in the First World War and the Second World War. The Second World War was a mopping up operation for the first. The 2 wars were connected with each other. And so in order for Pax Judaica to replace Pax Americana, you need a big war. And that is the Malhama. And so yes, you are right that Israel is already ruling the world, but not from in front of the curtain. It's from behind the curtain, yeah. Okay, here we are. This is indeed a difficult subject. If it is so important, why does Allah make it so difficult for us to understand? Allah offered you the amana. No one else in all of creation have it, only you. You are the only ones in all of creation with the capacity for independent thinking. The angels don't have that. No. You have the capacity for independent choice, free choice. The angels don't have that. While the jinn do have some logical thinking and some freedom, and therefore the jinn can be Muslim or Kafir. It is the human being par excellence to whom the Quran was sent. And Allah sent the Quran to you as a gift. And He said, I'm going to protect this Quran. And He said that this Quran will explain all things. And He says, you have to think. I send this Quran to a people who think. So are you going to blame Him if you don't do your work? Or you use the wrong methodology for studying the Quran, like the Salafi? No, don't blame Him. Blame yourself. How do you relate the current technology with Internet of Things, big data, artificial intelligence, robots, machine learning with DAJJAL? Yes, of course. It is connected with DAJJAL, artificial intelligence, robotic engineering and so on. It's all connected with DAJJAL. If you lose the capacity to understand that nothing in the world can compare with the human mind, nothing. There cannot be artificial intelligence anywhere out there comparable with the human mind. But the day you accept that artificial intelligence can replace the human mind, then you deserve to lose your capacity for thought. So regardless of what they produce out there, in the world of robotic engineering and artificial intelligence and all of these things, regardless of how fascinating the internet may become, you still do not have an excuse for going into the Quran and searching in the Quran for that which Allah has given to you, which explains the reality of the world today. You do not have an excuse if you don't do that, yeah. Should we as Muslims support Russia in every war? No, if Russia wages a wrong war, you don't support it. If Russia makes a mistake, you tell them you made a mistake. The Russians made a mistake, yes. And I have to give a lecture on the subject to tell them, the Russian president and the Russian foreign minister, who are some of the best in the world today, that you engage in the diplomacy of opportunistic thinking in order to advance your economic agenda when you embrace Sisi, when you embrace Sisi in Egypt. Mursi was bad. May Allah have mercy on the soul of Mursi, but Mursi made mistakes, serious mistakes. Amongst them was to open the door, or the frontiers of Egypt. Everybody can go and fight in the bogus jihad in Syria and kill all the Christians. Mursi made other mistakes. And may Allah forgive him, but they were mistakes. And the whole of the Ikhwan also made those mistakes. What the Russians did was they disliked Mursi and the Ikhwan so much that as soon as Sisi threw out Mursi, they embraced Sisi. They could not see that Sisi is worse than Mursi until Allah calls Mursi to die in the courthouse, in the courtroom. And these cowards who are ruling Egypt had to bury him in midnight. They couldn't risk burying him in the sunlight. The cowards who are ruling over Egypt. Yeah. So the Russian diplomacy and the Russian political stance was wrong on Egypt. Wrong on Saudi Arabia as well. They saw an opportunity. As Saudi Arabia, which is an ally of the United States all through history, is now approaching us. Huh? And when Saudi Arabia showed some signs of approaching Russia, they embraced the Saudis. Said, let's do business. Let's make a deal. And so the Russians then remained silent on the slaughter in Yemen. Yeah. It's called the politics of opportunism. And someone has to tell Russia that was wrong. A Christian should not do that. So you do not support Russia uncritically. No. Is there any connection between a woman and Dajjal? The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, Dajjal has many battlegrounds through which he attacks us. But his last battleground is women. He said the last people to follow Dajjal will be women. And a man would have to return to his home and tie, meaning coercively restrain his wife, sister, daughter, to protect them from being seduced by Dajjal, indicating that in Akhirul Zaman, a feminist revolution is going to emerge. And those who are in that feminist revolution will be so brainwashed that no matter what you say to them, you can't convince them. Your own daughter your own daughter, and she now becomes a lesbian. Yeah? And it's a shame, a disgrace for the whole family. But no matter what you say to her, nothing works. Yes. And your sister throws away her hijab. And she goes out in the open without any hijab. And the brother flew all the way from Tunisia to come to consult with me, Sheikh, what to do? What to do? My sister had thrown away the hijab, and now she's dressing the way the others are dressing, half naked. This is what the Prophet is talking about. That in Akhir Zaman there's going to be a feminist revolution. So when you find a Muslim woman, when you find a Muslim woman who is truly a woman and does not want to become a man, who wants to fulfill her functions as a woman and does not want to embrace the functions of a man, and who dresses the way a woman should dress modestly, and who wants a husband who is a man, not a boy. You should treasure such a woman. From last question, okay?
So,
From your research and study, which will come first? Imam al-Mahdi, Malhama, Dajjal, or Imam Mahdi Isa? Easy question. Easy question. The first is the Malhama, which will now occur soon. After the Malhama, the next will be conquest of Constantinople. After the conquest of Constantinople, the next would be the shadow will go, and now Dajjal will appear in person. When that happens, then before Nabi Isa alayhi salam is sent back, Imam al-Mahdi emerges. And then the last one will be the return of Nabi Isa alayhi salam. Is there any connection between Dajjal and the English language? Oh yes. Oh yes. Dajjal wants one world. He wants to create all of mankind in one world. A global society. So he needs to use language as a tool for bringing all of mankind into one global society. But languages, all languages, are a miracle from Allah, including the English language and the French language. And a Muslim has the right to acquire any language. But when you start speaking to your children in English and to your servant in Bahasa, huh? Did you hear me? Huh? Did you hear me? Are you in Pakistan and you speak to your children in English and to the servants in Urdu? You know, you're brainwashed. You're brainwashed. But if you have, your children must grow up with their native language. This must be their mother tongue. I want my children to do their thinking in their mother tongue, not in a foreign language. Good. And then after that, they then acquire the English language and the French language and so on. That's okay. Dajjal is using English and French. These are the two languages. Spanish is somewhere, and Italian and German. These are the two major languages that Dajjal is using, English and French. And the French are not going to give up. Brother Kevin here is fluent in French. Yeah. The French are proud of their language. They're not going to allow Shakespeare to take over from Molière. No. Okay? So we have these two languages in Akhir Zaman. It's important for us to know these languages. By all means, teach your children the English language, teach them French and so on. But remember, make sure that they are proficient in their native language. Okay, thank you. Wassalamu'alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. آمين.